Do you worry that spending too much early in retirement could be the reason you run out of money later? After helping hundreds retire, I've seen how shifting from saving to spending is one of retirees' biggest struggles. But if you can't make the shift, you'll miss out on the trips and experiences you spent your entire life saving for. So in this video, I'll show you the mistake that makes so many retirees worry about spending their money, and how to build a plan that lets you enjoy your money now without the constant fear of running out. To start, I need to show you what makes so many people freeze when it's actually time to enjoy their retirement. This chart shows two retirees who earn the same average 8% returns. The only difference is when those returns happen. Retiree A experiences a strong start and ends with a steep drop. Retiree B experiences the opposite, with a steep drop at the beginning and a strong rally at the end. At the end of the period, they both end up with the same strong growth, finishing with over 6 times what they started with. But now, let's look at those same two retirees. But this time, they're withdrawing 5% a year. Retiree A finishes the period with more money than they started with, but retiree B is completely out of money by year 13. So the same market that can create generational wealth while you're working can be the reason you run out of money, simply because you started spending your savings. But what does that actually mean for your retirement? Well, according to the Federal Reserve, the average American's net worth spikes 15% after retirement. And on the surface, that might sound like a good thing. But the walking tour in Paris or the hiking trip in the mountains isn't the same at 75 as it is at 65. So net worth going up in retirement means retirees are missing the chance to enjoy the retirement they saved for. But how do you actually enjoy your savings without risking running out? It comes down to avoiding one key mistake. And avoiding it is what helped Bill and Diane finally feel like they could spend their money without worrying about running out. Let me show you what it is so you don't make the same mistake. Bill and Diane had saved $1.5 million and wanted to retire this year at age 65. And to get ready, Bill made a spreadsheet modeling their retirement. If they wanted to keep up their current spending of $10,000 a month, it showed they would run out of money in their 80s. And when we took his numbers and put it in our software, it showed the same thing, with them running out of money at age 86. After seeing this, they assumed they needed to either cut spending or work longer. But after diving into the numbers, the only thing they needed to do was avoid one small but meaningful mistake with their planning. This chart shows the price of 3 of most retirees' biggest expenses and how they've changed in just the last 5 years. The average item's price went up 25% because of inflation, and some categories are even higher. Bill and Diane wanted to make sure they planned for this, so if their portfolio did drop, they still have enough saved to keep up. But this graph shows what researchers actually see when they study how retirees spend money over time. Bill's spreadsheet followed this dark line, which represents the idea that spending stays flat and just rises with inflation. But in real life, retirement spending usually follows the gray line, what's known as the retirement spending smile. Retirees start off spending more, but that number drops with age and picks back up as healthcare costs rise. So instead of using a constant inflation-adjusted number, we went back into Bill and Diane's plan and changed their spending to follow retirement spending smile. This uses a lower rate of inflation designed to better match how much retirees actually spend. And just by making this one change, Bill and Diane's plan goes from running out of money in their 80s to leaving behind $500,000. So now you know how to adjust your spending over time based on what actually happens in retirement. But there were still 3 more changes that helped Bill and Diane stop worrying about spending. And by the way, if you want to see how some of these changes affect your plan, I'll include a link below for you to get free access to the same software we pay thousands for. So let me show you exactly what those 3 changes are so you don't miss out on the retirement you saved for. Bill and Diane's goal was to replace the same $10,000 a month they were spending now in retirement. And this shows a breakdown of their spending that Bill had in his spreadsheet. But instead of just looking at what they're spending now, this second column shows exactly how each of these costs will change in retirement. The red is what they'll spend less on, the green where they'll spend more. Let's start with what will drop. The mortgage will be paid off in a couple years, so that $1,500 will drop to 0. And they won't need to save into their 401k, so that'll also drop to 0. But not everything will go down. They hadn't been able to travel like they hoped while busy with work, so we bumped that up another $500 a month or $6,000 a year. And healthcare costs would rise too. No more employer contributions, and we wanted to be safe with our estimate. Everything else we left the same. And when we stepped back and looked at their totals, their real retirement budget wasn't $10,000 a month. It was closer to $8,000. So we went back in and adjusted our software to reflect that. And once we made the change, you can see Bill and Diane had more than enough to replace their spending and still leave over $2 million to their kids. So by breaking down their spending and making sure it reflected what would change between work and retirement, they realized they had a lot more cushion than they thought. But even after doing this, there was still another mistake in how they planned their spending that would make them underspend their money. After that last change, Bill and Diane are using a flat $8,000 a month of spending and using a lower inflation rate based on the retirement spending smile. But doing this misses the most important part about the retirement smile. The reason spending stays high early on is because that's when retirees are healthy, active, and finally have time to take the trip they've always wanted. But as they get older and life slows down, it doesn't cost as much to garden and spend time with the grandkids as it does to go to Europe. So when we build a plan, we want to make sure it reflects that. So what does that actually look like? When we go back to Bill's spreadsheet, taxes, core living expenses, and insurance won't change much over time. But travel and hobbies are much more focused in their 60s and 70s than they are in their 80s and 90s. So instead of grouping all expenses into that one $8,000 a month number, let's separate them. Only $5,500 of that are true monthly expenses, and $2,500 is travel and hobbies. So instead of planning to spend $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year on travel and hobbies in their 80s and 90s, let's only plan for those costs for the first 15 years of retirement. When we go back to the plan and add in those changes, you can see it has a big impact. So when planning for your spending, it's important to not only focus on what you'll spend your money on, but when that spending will happen. But the most important change we made wasn't an actual line item in their budget. It was about how they viewed their spending. And this shift had them ready to book their dream trip the second they walked out. When most retirees think about spending, they treat every dollar the same. And when the market tanks, they think they need to cut their grocery bill or their air conditioning so they don't have to pull too much out of their savings. But think about packing for a vacation. When you're forced to cram everything into a carry-on, you have to decide what you actually need and what you're okay leaving behind. Retirement spending is the same. It's important to figure out what you need and what you don't. And instead of thinking about their spending as one big number, we split it into two buckets, needs and wants. Their needs are the expenses that don't change, and their wants are things like travel and hobbies. Right now, they're on track to leave behind more than $3 million. And that's fine, but that was never the goal. And that's where the flexibility comes in. Instead of leaving their spending as is, we doubled their travel and hobby spending from $30,000 to $60,000 a year. On paper, that lowers the probability of success. But here's the key. That probability assumes they never adjust. If markets ever got rough, they know they'd be fine lowering that discretionary spending. And if they did, the plan becomes rock solid again. And that's the power of separating needs from wants. Instead of thinking you're gambling with your retirement, you give yourself permission to enjoy it with a built-in safety net. So now you know the mistake that makes so many retirees worried about spending their money, and the 3 changes you can make to enjoy your money without worrying about running out. But even after having the perfect spending plan, retirees still hesitate to spend because of one fear. They keep constantly hearing how 2026 is going to be the next big market drop that drains their retirement savings. Watch this next. I'll show you the data that will make you stop worrying about investing in 2026 so you can finally enjoy your retirement.